I'm Edith Wilson of the World Bank Institute. The Development Outreach magazine focuses this summer on the power of innovation. And we're here today to talk with one of our authors, in fact, the author of a new book called Innovation Policy, A Guide for Developing Countries. Jean-Éric Aubert, who is one of the lead specialist economists in this area from the World Bank Group, has had the time to think through what developing countries need to know about innovation policy.
The first idea to really keep in mind is that innovation is something which is new relative to a given context.
Okay.
Innovation is not something new in absolute terms. It can be true when you have something at the frontier of technology. But for developing countries, what matters is something which is new in their context. And sometimes it can be technologies, very simple ones, which are well known, available worldwide, but which are not applied in their context. Take one simple example. Fighting malaria. One of the most powerful instruments is just bed nets, which are properly disseminated, used, and so on. And that requires some education and training, possibly some financial incentives for the use of such bed nets, and so on. And this is an innovation which has a tremendous impact for improving the health conditions in poor countries fighting against malaria. And so you can understand that it's quite different from, for instance, the invention of the mobile phone. At the same time, the use of the mobile phone now, spreading all over the countries, is also changing considerably the conditions of communication between people, trade, and so on. So all sorts of technology can be useful, but at the same time, we have to understand what matters really for developing countries, which is something new in their context.
Innovation policy is the subject of this book. If you're a small businessman in South Asia, or you are a social entrepreneur in Africa, a development marketplace winner perhaps, why does innovation policy matter to you?
If you don't have this receptiveness, this climate of the society which is open to your experiment, to your proposal, then you won't go very far. You have to approach the role of the government as a gardener.
A gardener.
A gardener.
How wonderful.
Because innovation, as I mentioned, is like the expression of life. So you should not have a mechanistic view of innovation, but much more an organic one. That means if you think about a flower, for instance, what you need to do is basically to do three things. You need first to water the flower properly. And in terms of innovation, that means the project which is here, you need to support the project appropriately and the innovators in providing the appropriate information that he needs in terms of technology, trade, organization, what else. Finance also, some form of help, because precisely it's risky projects, so they need to receive some support which cannot come just by the private sector. Then you need to take care of the weeds, to remove the weeds and the pest. And in the context of innovation, the weeds and the pest are precisely the anti-competitive actions, the monopolies, the predators, the bureaucracies, which are putting a lot of bureaucratic obstacles or not appropriate regulation and so on. So this fighting against obstacles to innovation is one of the fundamental functions that governments have to fulfill. And it's not easy because there are a lot of lobbies against that. And finally, you need to nurture the soil for the plant to grow, to fertilize. That means action regarding knowledge, so better education, research effort, information, and so on. So that is, I would say, the basic function that has to be fulfilled by the government promoting innovation.
Are there any other basic instruments of policy that you think it's important for people to understand?
But you have to understand that innovation policy is something which, in fact, come in a context where there are already a lot of policies existing, which the field is quite crowded, if I may say, with other existing policies who thought that they are promoting innovation in their way and so on. But it's not the case. So first, you need generally some agencies which are really focused on promoting innovation and operating in a flexible way. That means if you have a hammer just in your hand, then everything looks like nails.
Yes.
So you need to have a more diversified set of tools, that different types of action that you can undertake with your agency. It could be
So an agency might be a ministry, it might be a smaller part of government.
Generally, it's something which is associated to a ministry, but which is sufficiently independent in the way it can operate. It can be a public-private body.
Okay.
Some of them in the world have functioned well as a public-private body, partnership. It can be a clear public bodies with a clear mandate for promoting innovation and innovators and so on. That's one thing. It should have local antennas because you have to be very close to the entrepreneurs. So you need to have that sufficiently spread out over the territory. Second type of instruments is efficient incentives, which will push people to collaborate, to change the behavior. Typical incentives that which are used in innovation policy are matching grants, for instance, in which you facilitate or you stimulate cooperation, for instance, between university and industry on specific projects. And so people receive money, providing they collaborate, and for instance, university people get money if, for instance, there is industry, the business sector, who put 50% of the money too. You see, so it's the third type of instruments is what we call, I would use a French word, which is animé, which is stimulating life, stimulating mind, and so on. And that can be fairs, like the development marketplace, typical, an animation tool. But it can be also technology audits, for knowing better what are the technological competence of the country or the region. It can be also institutional audits, like, for instance, the investment climate assessment, which are produced by the bank, but would be fine-tuned, focus on innovation obstacles.
So this is at the World Bank, and what is exactly the instrument you're describing?
The investment climate assessment, which is...
and that can be used?
Providing it's oriented towards the innovation obstacles, not too broad.
All right.
And this type of audits are useful because they shake up the institutions. And another type of instrument which is important are focus program on specific sectors, in which you have the three functions I was mentioning, which are put together. Some, for instance, for training, some looking at the appropriate standards and regulations for pulling the market, and also some financial support for promoting certain technology. That's focus application on specific sectors. And final instruments, that's the last point which I want to emphasize, is because innovation policy is operating in different development departments of the government, some dealing with education, others with research, with industry, trade, and so on, and finance. These different ministries need, in fact, to be coordinated. And the best way, the most efficient, if you can coordinate that at the prime minister level with a powerful instrument. But the problem is very often it's just soft consultative in which there is a consensus making and so on. So most of this coordination body, which exists in a number of countries, doesn't work very well. There are some exceptions. A good case is, for instance, Finland. There is no reason why it should not apply in some developing countries too.
Finland, with the wonderful story of it growing its technology sector because it decided to do so and had a consensus model, but it then acted.
Yeah.
And Nokia came out of that whole experience. Looking ahead, what do you see as an expert in this field as the new approaches, the new ways that innovation is going to be achieved as well as tackled in the future?
There is a tendency of people to do all the same everywhere. They don't think enough about their country specificities, their strengths, their weaknesses, not only their strengths in terms of agriculture or industrial base or geographic location, but their specific features in terms of mindsets, culture, behaviors, and so on. And they have to dig out that for better understanding who they are, and then express their creativity in such a way that these unique attributes can be exploited. That will be a kind of self-analysis of countries.
So that's their competitive or comparative advantage, is how different they are.
How different they are, and also what are I would say, the roadblocks which are part of the society, which they have to understand and try to remove. So at the end of the day, it will be a real societal innovation exercise. That's the first point. We need to understand much better the way to approach these specific attributes of countries. And that is not done in the book. It's a generic principles, but the next book would be on this type. Second point, which is not at the national level, but at the meso level. You see, the level of sector, organizations, cities, or things like that. It's new approach which are opening space for creativity. So it's social experiments in which you are testing the way the public accept new technology. It's future centers that you create to look towards the future on specific issues. For instance, in Netherlands, they are creating future centers to look about the future of channels and flood in view of the raising of sea level, because it's fundamental for the country.
Yes.
But you have such a future center which are now spreading in the different parts of the world, even in developing poor countries. So this type of social experiments, new knowledge networks and so on, and which are becoming fundamentally important with the new technology which connect everyone. So including Facebook and so on, that will be the basic net. The third element which is important is to think that individuals at the end are the key driver. So you have to impact more and more emotionally a large amount of people. It could be managers who have to see the world in a different way. It could be youth that can see what are the issues, what are the societal challenges, what are the change in technology, the business opportunity, and that you have to act at the school level. And a much more, I would say, large approach, including the use of media, creating this emotional change on people to open their mind, which is not done enough today. And finally, that is the last point, the 21st century cannot escape from global innovation programs. The global innovation programs will address issues like environment, climate change, energy supplies, urbanization trends, and they have to be built up in such a way that the basic bricks will be national actions, but in a coordinated way for precisely tackling these major issues. That's probably the way forward for the 21st centuries.
Thank you so much for joining us and talking about this whole area, and in such an interesting way. And so thank you, Jean-Éric Aubert, a gardener of innovation. I hope people will both read the Development Outreach article as well as this new book, Innovation Policy for Developing Countries. Thank you.